I am going to teach you how to become dangerously self-educated using 3 examples. A creative project, so starting a newsletter, a physical skill, like jiu-jitsu, or a reading list or how to prepare for an exam, which is abstract knowledge. Here is the plan of attack for this video. It's going to be quite long, so buckle in. First, we are going to go over why I do not like second brains and taking linear notes is a waste of your time. We're then going to go over how knowledge is built inside the brain, and I don't know why we're just not told this in school, so we're going to run over that as best as we can, and then we're going to get into the 3 examples I just said at the start of the video. This video is quite long and I wrote this newsletter about 1 or 2 months ago, I think, and it went viral on Substack. It has about 93,000 reads, so a lot of people seem to benefit from this, so hopefully it will benefit you too. I also think this is going to piss a lot of people off and I might ruffle a few feathers. And here's why. Most of your learning is fucking pointless, and everything you think is making you smarter is actually holding you back. Nobody tells you highlighting books is a waste of time. Writing 70,000 words of notes in your second brain only to let them gather dust, never to be seen again. That's what I did a year and a half ago when I thought that that was how you were actually meant to learn something and get good at learning, which is just not true at all. Or listening to podcasts on walks or while driving to work in the morning that go in one ear and out the other. It is all mental masturbation, just making your ego happy. Here is what I think actually works. Waking up excited to create, building something that matters, learning by solving real problems, and not just collecting a bunch of information that you're never going to actually use. This is pretty much the life that I've built over the last 10 months or so, and this video or this newsletter, if you're reading it over on my Substack, is going to show you how to do the same. In the last 10 months or so, I've taken the opposite approach to learning, in actually learning how to grow a newsletter, how to start a newsletter, how to learn how to write, how to start a personal brand. And I do say learning because I did have to learn it all by scratch. I was halfway through college when I first started writing on Substack, and I didn't just spend 2 hours a day watching YouTube tutorials on how to write or how to start a personal brand. I did all of this by solving problems in real time. Learning by doing, by finding what I need in the moment to overcome an obstacle, applying what I just learned and moving on to my next problem, stopping me from progress. This is what I call outcome-based learning, and I genuinely believe it's why I think 1, most people's learning is just absolutely pointless. I think it's a waste of time, and 2, I also think it's why most learning or self-education plans are just absolutely just rubbish. Most learning plans teach you to collect information. They don't teach you how to use it for achieving something great. Here's a profound idea. The real test of learning isn't what you know, but what changes. I know this idea has been beaten to death online, but Naval says that the true test of intelligence is whether you get what you want out of life. And self-education is the vessel that takes you there. Self-education, or learning in this manner, I fully believe, is what builds this type of intelligence. So if your learning isn't producing results, if it's not helping you to pass an exam, if you do need to pass an exam, this still applies to people that are in college and education as well. If your learning isn't producing results, like better creative outputs and having meaningful work you actually want to do, by jumping out of bed each morning like a hyperactive child, I think that's all just intellectual masturbation, and I think you are wasting your fucking time. I apologize, I get very passionate about this because I just think there's a better system that you can be using if you do want to learn how to learn, achieve the goals that you want to achieve, and become more self-educated than 99% of people. And I know that become better than 99% of people is such a clickbait title that has just been abused over the last 6 months on YouTube. You're probably fed up seeing titles that are like how to become smarter than 99% of people, but I genuinely believe it's true. I genuinely believe it is, and we're going to run through the entire, this is basically like a mini guide or a mini course on how to become truly self-educated. So let's get into it. A little over a year ago, I spent 3 months writing 70,000 words worth of linear notes in Obsidian, and it was only on 3 books. I don't know if I have them there, but it was The Problems of Philosophy by Bertrand Russell, it was The Republic by Plato, and The Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. And I retained almost nothing that I wrote. I retained none of the notes that I wrote in that time. I don't know how many words are in a 300-page book, but when I write these newsletters are about 2,000 words. That's like 35 newsletters I could have written in that time. That's like half a year's worth of content. I did retain none of it, and the breaking point came about 3 months in. I decided one day to sit down and write an essay using all of that quote-unquote knowledge that I had built. And I opened Obsidian, I scrolled through the 70,000 words of notes, and I realized I couldn't remember a single useful insight without reading the notes again. I couldn't write about the knowledge that I had apparently built without looking back at the notes meticulously. I had spent hundreds of hours building a graveyard and not a brain. If you struggle with this too, with reading and retaining nothing that you read, I made a reading guide. It's called A Guide to Profound Reading. I made it a couple of months back in November. It's a 3-step system for helping you to actually read books properly based on managing your cognitive load and how to prime and how to actually encode properly. Basically for helping you build actual knowledge that connects to your memory inside your brain, that actually sticks and retains, because we just aren't taught how to read books in school, I don't think. It's the reason why I made it. I have a reading guide and I have a self-education guide. I like to think of the products that I built as just building the things that I wish I had 6 months ago or a year ago or when I was back in school. It doesn't teach you about how to highlight your books either. You don't need to be highlighting your books, and you don't need to be taking linear notes either. If you're interested, you can check out the guide. If not, no hard feelings. Sorry for the interrupt. We'll get back to the video. So in sum, this was basically what my aha moment was. If I have to reread my notes to use them, I have never learned them in the first place. I just moved information from a book to a hard drive. The knowledge never entered my head. So I deleted all of it. And I actually got some messages from you guys asking me if I still had the notes available because you wanted to read them, and I apologize, they're gone now. And once I deleted my second brain, I started over with a different question. What if I only learned things I could use immediately? And also, should I have been putting all of that time and effort into working on my thesis project? For sure, but we're not here to discuss that. The problem I have with second brains is that we confuse storing information with building real knowledge. Knowledge lives inside the brain, and it is built inside of the brain, not on a computer, not on a Notion or an Obsidian database, not in a commonplace or compendium notebook, because if you have to look something up to use it, you haven't learned it. You stored it somewhere outside your brain, outside of your web of knowledge. Knowledge is stored inside the brain as a web of knowledge. It looks like a schema or a mental model or a mental framework or a spider's web. That's how knowledge is actually stored inside of our brains. And I also think that if you're taking linear notes like this in the first place, then the chances, I say the chances because this doesn't apply, there's obviously going to be exceptions. I already know that your people are writing the comments now just being like, nah, but what about this? If you have to track something meticulously, if you have to take lots of notes on something, the chances are that the information that you're filing away is not even worth becoming knowledge in the first place. If you have to store and track a piece of information, it's likely a waste of your fucking time. I understand that second brains can work, but most people use them as storage boxes and not battlefields. They offload the learning process onto a system and mistake organization for understanding. The notes pile up, the tags multiply, the knowledge never compounds because it was never in their head to begin with. If you use a second brain for storage, you are limiting how efficiently you can learn. I still use a second brain myself. I use Eden, and I don't use it for storing notes, but I use it to create. I use it to write my newsletters. I use it to use the AI chats for research and ideation and brainstorming and outlining my newsletters like I did with this one. I use it for curating high signal ideas and sources that could fill gaps in my knowledge, questioning my own ideas and building prompts with AI, writing and publishing my weekly newsletter. But the vital distinction here is that I'm not archiving information. I'm using it to create. If the information is worth knowing, I'll encode it and use retrieval practice. I won't write a bloody note document to quote unquote learn it. That's not how the brain likes to learn. The mind is not a vault, it's a garden. It's a web of knowledge. And I use my second brain not for storage, but for building the web of knowledge inside my head through execution. Because storing information is just this passive process. It's the execution. That's what leads to learning. It's creation. Creation and evaluation. That's what leads to learning. And this also connects to a deeper problem. Most learning systems are linear. Courses, curriculums, books with personal note-taking systems. They train you to move from start to finish like a train on a track. But as we've said, knowledge is not linear. It looks like a spider's web. It looks like this. I went through 5th and 6th year in school copying and pasting linear notes from a projector to my hardback copy, never to look at 90% of these notes again, because I had the book. I had my history books, I had my geography books, and I even had the slides that we were taking the notes from on the board. Just because you're writing notes on a page doesn't mean you're building new knowledge inside your head. And I know there are people that do like to write in order to learn, but it's not very effective because it's very linear, especially if you're not really paying attention to what you're writing about. That's a fault on my part when I was in school, but also everyone else. I could just see it around me. Is like people are just looking at the board, taking down the notes, not really thinking about it. My point is more that you can't assume that you're learning something just because you're writing about it. Like writing an essay or learning tons of linear notes. Let me give you an example. I want you to think of a spider's web. A spider can't build a web that looks like a straight line. It will collapse without having a structure. It needs connections, anchor points, tension between lever moving ideas. That's how knowledge works. Each new concept gains strength from what it's connected to. Isolated notes in a second brain are threads with nothing to hold on to, which get dumped into the garbage bin by your first brain. So we have linear storage of linear notes and then non-linear knowledge, because knowledge is non-linear, it's not linear. That is the mismatch that is preventing most people from becoming profound thinkers, and it is my mission to change that. So how do you actually build knowledge, like how the brain actually does like to build knowledge? And how can we build knowledge in a way that it compounds across time? This is how unique knowledge is built. This is something that still blows my mind. Fundamentally, everything is just information. Books, courses, conversations, lectures, slides, AI outputs, web pages. And the difference between a life-changing insight and a forgotten fact is not the source, it's what you do with multiple sources. I want to run you through my current level of understanding of the learning science of how knowledge is actually built inside the brain. And once you see this, you'll understand straight away that most learning systems are just completely backwards. Think of your brain like a construction site, and you're building a house, maybe a Minecraft house. Information arrives like raw materials. You have your wood, your stone, your glass, but you can't just dump them in a pile or in a chest and call it a house. You need to build something. You need to do something with the materials. The first thing that happens is information enters working memory. Your working memory is a workbench. It's where you process the raw materials. But the issue is that your workbench is tiny. It can only hold 7 plus or minus 2 things at once before they fall off the bench and disappear forever. I've also seen in other sources, I've been doing a lot of research recently into chunking, that working memory can only hold 4 units of information. So you'll get it from a couple of sources. Some of them say 7 plus or minus 2. Others will say 4. It's going to be between 4 and 7. This is also why you forget podcasts. The information is coming in so fast that it just hits your workbench and it falls off before you could do anything with it. The second thing that happens is encoding information from your working memory into long-term memory, which is integration. To move information from the workbench, which is working memory, into permanent storage, which is long-term memory, you have to integrate it with the structure you've already built. You do this through 3 types of encoding. The first is elaborative encoding. This is connecting new information to prior knowledge, connecting new ideas to what you know about philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, even the favorite mocha drink that you drink every morning if you're like me. The second is organizational encoding, which is chunking information into mental models, frameworks, or schemas, whatever you'd like to call them. So building that spider's web that we talked about earlier, like a mind map inside the brain. And the third one we have is semantic encoding. So that's understanding the meaning of concepts inside the big picture, and not just memorizing words. Think about the idea of when people say that when you're reading a book, you should read between the lines. That's basically what this means. I always love keeping you guys up to date with what I'm currently learning about. I literally just see my newsletter as me learning in public and just trying to solve my own problems, my past problems, my present problems, and my future problems. I'm just writing to my past, present, future self pretty much. And recently I've been learning about marketing and business. So Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. So his levels of customer awareness, which is just insane, it's blowing my mind. If you're looking to start writing online, you can check, I have writing strategies on my Substack, you can check them out if you'd like. But I think it's very important to understand the levels of awareness. It's very, very cool. And also Alex Hormozy's $100 million offers, and now his Leads book. I started reading that last night. But I haven't been taking linear notes on these topics. Personally, I've been looking to see how the concepts can connect to what I already know and how they fit into my overall understanding or my overall schema or mind map or mental framework I have for the topic of business. Encoding is integration, and you integrate by making connections, which is what I was doing in this example that I just gave. And you can probably see that highlighting books doesn't really do this very well, because you're just marking pages and not building deep connections inside your brain. So we have consumed information. The information has entered our working memory, and we have now integrated that information that we've been warping and manipulating inside of our working memory. We have encoded it into our long-term memory by making connections through elaborative encoding, organizational encoding, and semantic encoding. And once you have encoded information into memory, the last step is retrieval. Here is where most people fuck everything up. They think learning ends at step 2, at encoding. But what's arguably more important than encoding is retrieval. In order to retain knowledge, you have to actually use it. Retrieval is the act of pulling information back out from memory without looking at your notes. Think of the Feynman technique, writing a newsletter from memory, solving a real problem in your daily life. Every time you retrieve knowledge from memory, you strengthen your web. But every time you don't, the threads weaken and eventually snap. I learned this the hard way by writing my 70,000 words worth of linear notes in Obsidian. I was encoding, barely, and I never had a retrieval practice in place. I never used the knowledge to build anything, so it evaporated. 3 months of work, covered in dust, across the abandoned desert I call my PC hard drive. Here is the mental model of what we have discussed so far. Information gets encoded through integration, which we then retrieve and use, which is what forms unique knowledge. Knowledge isn't just facts inside your head. Knowledge is the structure that guides your thoughts, your decisions, and your actions. It's what lets you solve problems and build the life you want. Which brings me to the most important point or profound idea of this entire video. To know what knowledge to build, you don't need a learning plan. You need problems. You need problems. Because without a problem to solve, you have no reason to retrieve knowledge. And then without retrieval, nothing is going to stick. Your workbench just stays cluttered and the construction site never becomes a house. All those materials that you've gathered, you've spent hours watching videos, taking notes, and you still haven't put them together to forge them into a Minecraft house that you can live in. This is why outcome-based learning works. It gives you a purpose for every piece of information, a place in the web, and a problem to solve. Let's go through the system together now. This is the outcome-based learning system. Step 1 is priming. Start with a vision, not a topic. Before you learn anything, you need to know why you are learning it. Not, I want to learn marketing. That's a topic. Topics are infinite. You could spend a lifetime learning about marketing while never moving a single needle. Instead, ask yourself this question. What life am I trying to build? A year ago, I said I wanted to wake up, write for 1 to 2 hours every morning, talk about my interests online, and build a part-time business around it. Although I didn't properly understand at that point how to achieve that goal, that vision still primed everything I learned. Every piece of information got filtered through that question. Does this help me build that life? Now I'm getting a couple hundred subscribers every day on my newsletter. A lot of you guys are coming over from YouTube, which is really good to see. Welcome. And I'm looking to quit my job in the next 6 months, which is class, hopefully. Another recent example I can think of from a couple of weeks ago is how to outline my newsletters. I wasn't just studying writing. I had a specific bottleneck, being my drafts were messy and my newsletters were taking too long to complete. The vision was to publish a newsletter within 5 to 6 hours of writing, which made the problem obvious, and it made my learning urgent and purposeful, because your vision is what primes your mind on what to look for. Most people learn in terms of topics and chapters. You'll read chapter 3 on a book which is all about persuasion, but your brain doesn't care about chapter 3. It cares about solving problems. Here's a profound idea. Linearity in learning is a prison. Instead of thinking you need to learn about X or Y, think about what's blocking you from living the life you want, because your learning starts with your bottlenecks and your problems are your learning curriculum. Step 2 is on information, which is to hunt, synthesize, and apply. Here is how outcome-based learning works in practice, and I'm going to use my newsletter outlining example or problem as an example. The first step was to identify the immediate bottleneck. My newsletters were taking about 10 to 12 hours. Some of them were taking a lot longer than that because I didn't have an outline and I was just wandering about, I was waffling, and my writing was a little bit all over the place. The second step was to curate sources. I found 10 to 15 YouTube videos on the topic of outlining, and I added them inside of my curation folder inside of Eden, and I named the folder outlining. The third step was to consume and synthesize. I watched about 3 or 4 videos and I was trying to compare and contrast the ideas that they were giving me, the information that they were talking about. And then once I got to the 5th or 6th video, they all started saying the same thing. I could start to see the general principles of like, right, okay, this video is saying this video is saying this video is saying this. Okay, they're all kind of saying the same thing. What's the general idea that I can take from each of these 3 videos? I did not take any notes while watching these videos. I used my own brain to think and took mental notes inside my head. And they all followed the same principle, being outlines have layers of ideas. Start with the big picture, so a macro structure, then drill into specifics, which is the microstructure. And that is the general principle I spotted right away. Step 4 was to stop consuming. After I started watching more than 5 or 6 videos, they all pretty much started saying the same thing, which meant I had struck a high signal idea that I was going to think about and apply to my problem, see if it could help me solve my issue of outlining. Step 5 was to apply immediately. I built an AI prompt that would teach me how to outline and not just write the outline for me, but actually question me and help me move through each step of the process based on the information that the videos were trying to tell me. Then I made 3 outlines to test what I had learned, and by the 3rd outline it was way better than the first and better than the second as well. Step 6 was to iterate. I managed to solve this problem. Even now, this problem has remained solved. I'm now moving from my research and ideation phase to my outlining phase within about 1 to 2 hours or so. It used to take 5 to 6 hours to complete both phases, which is important feedback for me. The new knowledge has stuck because I used it and will continue to use it permanently. And step 7 is to move on to the next bottleneck. Currently it's on idea generation and going on more walks and trying to figure out a system for how I can capture ideas while I'm on walks and organizing them inside my second brain. So when I actually go to sit down and write, I can just drag and drop the ideas in and more or less have a whole newsletter written out just based on the ideas that I come up with while on walks. The reason why this works is because it's all non-linear, integrated learning. You're not reading one book cover to cover, but leaping from source to source like a frog on lily pads. You're only landing on the lily pads that solve your immediate problem. You don't read a 300-page book just to tell you how many planets are in the solar system. You Google your very specific question, you solve it by answering it, and then you move on to your very specific next question. You delay taking action because you think you need to learn more first, but the real learning only begins once you start doing. That's the paradox. That is a quote by Jude Fredman. Learning by doing is the ultimate filter because it removes anything that isn't needle moving. Once a problem gets solved, it stays solved. This means your knowledge compounds. It simplifies itself. It forges general first principles you can hold as your own. Your knowledge basically becomes high signal and idea dense. Step 3 is on knowledge. Make it dense, general and usable. Information should be turning into knowledge that compounds over time. Your knowledge should be getting denser, more general, more applicable, and more first principles. If you're interested in idea density, listen to the Naval podcast. When I learned about outlining with the example that I gave, I didn't memorize shit. I extracted the principles, hierarchical structure, macro to micro, and that principle now applies to every single newsletter that I've written since. And that's compounding knowledge. It's a web of principles that all connect together to strengthen each other. And this is where encoding and retrieval can come back in. Encoding is synthesizing. You consume 3 to 5 sources and extract the general principle by building connections. And retrieval is your action. You use the knowledge without looking at notes. Writing a newsletter from memory, solving a problem in real time. Every retrieval strengthens the web of knowledge you have inside your brain, which leads on to another profound idea. Doing leads to the desire to learn and therefore to learning. That is a quote from Naval. The more you use knowledge, the more it sticks. The more it sticks, the more you want to use it. This is the opposite of a second brain full of notes that you never touch. Knowledge that compounds is knowledge you use. That was an awful lot to take in, so here is a mini plan I want you to do right now. Pick one problem that's blocking you today. Just one. The one problem that, if solved in the next 48 hours, would unlock immediate progress. Then hunt for solutions. Find 5 to 10 sources, which can be videos, articles, or whatever. Watch and read them, looking for patterns, not details. Don't take notes, just think. And the last step is to apply it immediately. Spend 30 minutes testing what you learned. If it doesn't work, adjust and try again. That's it. One problem, one solution, one iteration. Do this and you will see your first win within 48 hours, I can guarantee it. Then you just repeat for your next problem. If you did this for 15 to 20 minutes every single day for 1 month, you'd solve 15 to 20 real bottlenecks that are actually holding you back from living the life that you want. That's what education is for. The purpose of self-education is to build the life you want, not to know stuff, not to read 52 books a year, to change. School teaches you topics, but self-education teaches you how to live. Let's walk through the 3 examples now. A creative project, a physical skill, and a reading list or exam preparation. But first, I know what you're already thinking. I've been taking notes for years, I have a second brain, I've built systems, and you're asking me to throw all that away. Not exactly. I'm asking you to test a different approach. Try it for a week, you can keep your second brain if you want, but try learning without it. Just for a week, try to solve 1 problem per day using this system and do it for 7 days. Don't object to it unless you've done it for 7 days. If it doesn't work, you lose absolutely nothing. But if it does work, it means you'll never have to highlight books or take tons of linear notes ever again. And you're going to save an awful lot of hours. And in my opinion, you're not missing out on much. The mental shift is going to feel weird at first, but unlearning a bad habit is easier than you think when the new habit gets you results in 48 hours instead of 48 weeks. Let's start with our first example. Example 1. Starting a newsletter or a creative project. Let's say you have a creative outlet that you love doing. You don't have to think about monetization or all that business shit for now. Let's just get you creating and publishing content consistently while also iterating smartly and engaging in trial and error. And the reason why I say that, why I say iteration and trial and error, is because I don't actually like the 10,000 hour rule. And here is the profound idea as to why. 10,000 hours does not make you a genius. It only points you in the right direction. 10,000 iterations makes people geniuses. 10,000 mistakes spotted, fixed and learned from across years. I remember writing my first newsletter thinking, how in the hell am I going to get anyone to read this? Writing is a skill, and a skill consists of various techniques or micro habits that come to form that skill, which solves a problem or a series of problems to achieve an outcome. You don't need to learn writing. What you do need is to solve one of your own problems, one of your own bottlenecks, while writing every newsletter that you write every week. One newsletter a week is what I recommend. I also can't tell you what a high quality newsletter looks like or a long form piece of content. Your audience will do that for you, but I can definitely tell you what a piece of long form content that I would never even touch or go near reading would look like. And you can definitely do the same. My first newsletter I ever wrote belongs to get burned in the trenches of hell. It's at the very bottom of my Substack if you'd like to scroll down it and read it. It's not very good. But my second newsletter took half the time. The newsletter after that week then took twice as long. But I learned how to create more attractive thumbnails and better hooks. Then I started addressing my bottlenecks as they appeared, crafting better hooks with curiosity loops, pattern interrupts, and vulnerable stories, curating ideas from idea-dense sources, and structuring my essays better so I don't ramble, which is what I solved by outlining. I would recommend writing down all of your bottlenecks. For each bottleneck, curate 5 to 10 sources. If you're like me, it could be YouTube videos on hooks, articles on storytelling structure and copywriting frameworks, or high-performing ideas from writers you admire and wish to emulate. If you do this, you will extract general principles, not just short-term tactics. You will learn that hooks create curiosity by withholding information temporarily. That's a skill. You can literally learn this and get more people to care to read your work and your writing. Or that a good structure moves from problem to insight to solution. Ideas come from your own problems and solutions, your own proof from your own experience and not just trends. You have to write, publish, and then just see what works. Then you want to double down on what works. You want to do more of what works and do less of what doesn't, and just keep iterating until you find success. You need to publish at least one newsletter a week. You can call it a newsletter, an essay, a long form piece of content, a YouTube video, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't do any more of that because you want your quality of writing and ideas to be as high as possible. That's why I give myself a full week to write these videos. Give yourself the full week to write it and give yourself a limit of 2,000 words. Don't ramble like I did in this one. After 8 weeks, you will have solved 8 bottlenecks and each solution will become a part of your growing creative process. Example 2 is learning jiu-jitsu, or a physical skill. There isn't any more of a rewarding journey than that of achieving your jiu-jitsu blue belt, which mine is right there. I did have 2 stripes on it, but I washed my belt a couple of weeks ago and they came off in the wash and I just haven't been arsed to put them back on. At 20 to 21, I was obsessed with jiu-jitsu. I only train once or twice a week now because my newsletter is where I'm finding most of my energy to be drifting towards. I'll never forget the day I got my blue belt. I was over in Oxford to see my sister who lives over there. She works for McLaren now. And we'd gone to see a Tool concert and the grading was the day after the concert. And I remember being really worried about I was going to miss my flight home because I was told to be there. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to get my blue belt now. Even though I didn't feel ready and I still felt like my jiu-jitsu was really shit. But I landed 1 hour before the grading began. I made it in time, got my belt, and I was like, yeah. So let's say you want to start training jiu-jitsu or you want to learn a physical skill. When training physical skills, it's important to understand the importance of having a desired outcome, a vision, and iterating based on feedback or data relentlessly. Only focus on improving one thing at a time during each session. You want to sprint, rest, reflect, and sprint with a new iteration, a new 1% improvement. If you make 1% improvement in your life every single week for a year, that is 52 1% permanent improvements you've made. That is a profound idea I will give you to think about. Humans are built to hunt like lions, not graze like cows. If you do more than one thing at a time, you won't be able to focus on getting quality feedback relating to the one issue you're trying to solve. For example, if I rock up to a Friday open mat, which lasts 2 hours, meaning I'll get about 10 rounds in on average, that's 10 rounds to practice one technique with focus or to practice 5 techniques distracted. Pick one problem and focus on just that. When hunting for solutions, be deathly specific. You don't watch a 10-hour jiu-jitsu course just to get a tiny detail on your wrist placement during an armbar. You find 5 to 10 videos on closed guard armbar and you repeat the process we have talked about. Example 3 is completing a reading list or studying for an exam, which is abstract knowledge. Let's say you have an exam you want to pass or a reading list you would like to complete. The reason why I say both examples here is because both require having learning outcomes. This will be your retrieval practice, and any form of digesting information you do will be about encoding said information in the way you plan to retrieve it. Here's a random example. You have 12 chapters to study in 2 weeks. That's 6 chapters per week that must be encoded and then retrieved from your memory across those 12 weeks, as much as is required to prevent the loss of retention, or what's called the forgetting curve. So let's just picture this out. It's a Monday morning. You've sat down at your desk with your favorite coffee and your Harry Potter mug, and you start taking notes on everything beginning with page 1, chapter 1. This is completely wrong. This is what you do instead. You start by looking at how you will be tested, i.e., how you plan to retrieve the knowledge from your memory. If it's an exam you're preparing for, do past exam papers. If it's a book you're reading on your reading list, make a test for yourself. Ask AI to make you a test and tell it what you want to be tested on very specifically. Then hone in on the big picture concepts. Always start with the big picture. I learned that from Justin Sun. You can memorize fine details later once you actually understand where each detail connects. And test yourself a lot. Use the Feynman technique to explain the concept out loud without notes or while drawing a mind map from memory. Anything that you forget, that you can't explain very well, these are knowledge gaps. This is what you have to learn on when you go to learn the following day or later in the day or after you've done your retrieval practice. Fill them in and repeat the process until your books and topics feel intuitive to you, which means that when your exam day comes or when you're looking to test yourself properly, you're navigating a web of connected knowledge inside of your own brain, which is what we want. This is the purpose of this video. It's to build real knowledge, and hopefully I've helped you with in some way. Here's a profound idea to finish us off. Learning happens when you solve problems, not when you consume information. You don't learn to write by reading about writing. You don't learn jiu-jitsu by watching jiu-jitsu videos on YouTube. You don't pass exams by highlighting textbooks. You learn by doing, by facing a problem, hunting for what you need, applying it, and moving on. That is what outcome-based learning is. If you want a complete system for helping you to build this into your life, that's why I made my Profound Self-Education Guide. This is what you'll get inside of the guide. You'll understand the 4 principles of an autodidact, how to become profoundly self-educated, vision creation exercises, which is building your ideal day, your anti-vision, using the So That test to define what life you're building, the complete system structure, which goes from daily tasks to weekly targets to 3-month horizons, how to define and approach your first project, the iteration engine framework, which is evaluate, destroy, and rebuild, for permanent 1% improvements, an AI self-education coach prompt that builds your personalized plan conversationally, which you can return to and improve across time. It helps you make a detailed plan with very granular actions suited to your problems, your needs, your vision, your goals. Then we have deep work principles and scheduling techniques for 30 to 90 minutes of focused learning per day. This is the exact learning/productivity system that I used to grow my newsletter to almost 30,000 subscribers on Substack in the last 10 months, while also working a full-time job and having a girlfriend and going to the gym and doing jiu-jitsu and seeing the lads and all that stuff. If you're not interested, there is no hard feelings. I still really appreciate you being here. I know your time and attention is extremely valuable, so I really thank you for watching. I really hope you've got something from this. Let me know if you have any feedback, anything I can work on. If you have any newsletter topics as well, feel free to leave them down below. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter, I'll leave the link to it down below in the description. There's a discount code to my Substack paid tier in the welcome email, and there's 2 bookmarks that will help you with your reading. It is a bookmark for improving your reading comprehension and a bookmark for, I believe it's a checklist for running you through how you go through priming and coding and then consolidating what you've read. I can't really remember. It's in the welcome email. Check the welcome email. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. You're an absolute legend and have a great day.